Thanks so much, Eddie, and thanks, Juliet, and thanks everyone for being here. This is one of those things, you put these things out into the universe and then they come back to you. So thanks so much, everyone, and thanks, BISA, for supporting this event. It's lovely to see some of you that I already know, but those of you that I've not met before, my name's Sophie, Sophie Harman. I'm a Professor of International Politics at Queen Mary University of London, where in September I took over as Research Director, which is a great time to take over because the ref is done and dusted, so I can either live on the glory or, you know, say that the failings have got nothing to do with me. But then, of course, we come at this time where research is either reaching for the stars or is in the gutter somewhere, I think, for colleagues. And so I really just wanted to get together with other research directors and sort of have a virtual coffee, which sounds awful, but, you know, I've got my tea, so I hope you have too. And just sort of have a chat about how everyone's doing, sharing advice about kind of initiatives that people are taking. And so what sort of my aim for the meeting is really sort of, yeah, just sharing advice and ideas, because I think we know the context. So we know that research has been hugely disrupted for the last 2 years, either because of fieldwork plans gone awry, collaborations falling apart, working from home. Some people love it, some people hate it. I personally hate it. Focus, partnerships, you know, partners just losing money and their livelihoods overnight, which is obviously devastating. Institutional support and how people are valued, and then that big nugget of time. I mean, when I talk to my colleagues, they're like, we just need time, which is becoming more and more impossible with workloads going up, student care responsibilities seemingly never ending, and also teaching. So in every school board or departmental meeting, teaching takes up, I would say, 4/5 of the agenda. And then there's a little squeeze time for research. And so I think part of my job is just going, everybody, you still like research, let's just try and remember that. So, I mean, if we do just want to have a grumble for an hour, that's fine. But, you know, also join your union. It's too late if you haven't joined UCU and not voted in the ballot, but it's not too late to join the union. But I think maybe it'd be more helpful and beneficial just to sort of share some of our ideas of what we're doing. So yeah, so I was going to open up to sort of see how everyone's, firstly, how is everyone? And then let's just sort of like think about some ideas. I'm also happy to start with all the things that I've been doing as well. So everyone all right? I love this. Yay, thumbs up. This is like a test of how to use Zoom. Yay, cool. All right, good. And I imagine, so everyone here is a director of research at the moment or is obviously interested in that kind of thing. Okay, right, great. And I'm hoping that also your universities are supporting you in some way to get research on track. We have what's called research recovery, but, oh yeah, Helena's like, but it doesn't necessarily translate into anything yet. So we're sort of like, I think this is a space actually where we can start to say to universities what it is that we might need. Because I think there is a, what is research recovery? Exactly. I think that's one question. We're being told it's happening, but I'm not really sure what it looks like. What it looks like for me, I suppose, and what I've started to do is my sort of focus is trying to reduce the bureaucracy and pressure on colleagues from the Central University. So I've cut all form filling for a year. So normally, not all form filling, but normally you have mentor form filling. Anything that's not essential, I've cut. I'm not even mentioning the ref. So I've decided that no one's talking about the ref until next year. No one needs to hear about it. I know not everyone is in the UK context, so that might not be relevant, but no metrics, no measurement, none of that. And as one of my colleagues said, I've gone full 1997 New Labour and turned the taps on. And if someone wants money for research, they can have it. Everyone's personal research allowance, we've just upped it, so no one has to kind of fill in a form and apply for it. And we have a general research fund, which I'm quite fortunate because my head of school is, you know, Gordon Brown. I'm not Tony Blair in this, I'm going to stop this analogy, but it's kind of supporting this turning the taps on kind of mentality, which I know again is not relevant to all departments and schools. We have quite healthy student numbers, so we're quite able to do that. And then just, yeah, constantly reminding people that research matters and trying to improve the ease of doing research, because that seems to be getting harder. It seems that there are more institutional limits on this than less. And then I suppose there's some bigger issues that people have come up with, which is about improving people's access to sabbaticals. So if people have had care responsibilities during the pandemic, does that mean that they can fast track their application for a sabbatical? How to protect Wednesday afternoons. I mean, geography, who always do things well at Queen Mary because they've got tiny student numbers, but no, not tiny. I forget these things are being recorded and I'm so gossipy. But geography always do things well, and they protect their Wednesday afternoons. So they always ensure that 1 week out of 3, there are no meetings on a Wednesday afternoon, and that's pure research for people. So that's some of the things that I've been doing. What's everyone else up to? Go for it, Alex. Hiya.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the new Director of Research at Leeds. So that's fun and challenging at the moment. And I guess just to pick up on, I mean, we're doing similar things to what Sophie's talking about, very new labour, turn on the taps, that kind of stuff. But one of the kind of big challenges, I guess, that I thought maybe we could ask you guys for advice about today is with regards to sabbaticals. And in particular, because I imagine we're not the only ones in this situation where we had to postpone people's sabbaticals during the pandemic in order just to get all hands on deck for teaching with all the added responsibilities and care duties that came with it. The problem is that then we have quite a huge backlog now of people who are eligible for sabbaticals based on the Leeds rules of time served teaching and so on. And we want to kind of bring in a system where we can judge different sabbatical applications against one another, and it's terrible that it potentially has to go to a competitive system. But one thing we wanted to bring into that was a consideration about COVID and the impact of COVID on people, as Sophie alluded to just then. But I guess as I'm trying to draft the proposal for how on earth we would do this, my concern is something that's already come up, is that, okay, we could do it based on caring responsibilities and things like that. But the issue then is that other colleagues who maybe live alone and don't have any caring responsibilities, but nonetheless had quite severe mental health challenges during COVID, also had their research impacted upon. And so I'm just trying to think, and I honestly don't know the answers to it, but if any of you have any ideas about how best to fairly go about offering resources and time to people, I'd be very, very grateful of any suggestions.
Thanks, Alex. That's the really impossible questions of who's had the worst pandemic and therefore who gets the sabbatical. We don't have that problem so much because sabbaticals were still honoured, actually. We didn't have everyone having to come back. But does anyone else have this experience or any sort of suggestions for Alex or thinking through similar things? Simon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Simon. I'm Director of Research at Sheffield. I was going to say something not about that, actually, but I'll say something about that first, which is we've got exactly the same situation, Alex, is that we cancelled them all last year, so now we've got a backlog, and we're aiming, I guess, to try and catch up over the next 2, possibly 3 years. So that the people who didn't have them last year are having them this year, but we can't have everyone who's due them taking them on schedule. I haven't got a solution for your how to prioritize problem, but one of the things we've done, which has gone down really well, is told everybody that even if they're delayed this time, their next sabbatical won't be affected. So it's not that they're actually losing any sabbatical. They're just, this time they might have to delay it by a year or by a semester just for kind of pragmatic reasons, but they'll still get their subsequent one on the time it was due. And that seems to have taken some of the dissatisfaction away from people who we had to delay. And we delayed people, some people volunteered to be deferred, some we had to do it for pragmatic reasons around teaching. So we didn't actually try and prioritize people on care grounds, but it's just a suggestion that telling people their next one will be on time does make it less of a momentous thing.
Thanks, Simon. We also had Helena and then Ben. Hi, Helena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Helena, and I'm a research director at Northumbria University. I think this is a brilliant idea. Thank you so much for organizing this meeting, because it's I think I've been a research director for a year and something now, but I think you're probably the first research directors I'm meeting. So it's great to be able to actually talk to you. Obviously Northumbria is a post-92, so it's probably in a slightly different situation, but I really see myself in a lot of the issues you actually brought up. So I think that's in my case, so we have a lot of students, so that allows us to actually have quite healthy budgets. So we have no budget issue. So in terms of, I absolutely see myself in what Sophie was saying, that we're trying to distribute as much money as possible. We even did something, we started doing something that might be of use to you, which is you as research directors. So because a lot of people couldn't actually, especially with caring responsibilities, couldn't actually go out and do field research for COVID reasons, for many other reasons, we actually expanded the remit of what kind of thing we give money for. And one of the things we're starting giving money for is actually writing retreats. So if those people can get childcare for, let's say, like 3 days, thanks to family, friends, anything, we started giving them money to actually go and actually spend 3 days in a hotel room where they can just focus on preparing, finalizing papers, submitting articles. So they can actually now get money for that, which is, I think, really a great improvement for us. In terms of trying to tell them that research matters and trying to make research easy, we didn't really experience the same kind of issues that probably almost everyone did, which is over the course of the last 2 years, we saw actually an expansion of the number of articles and bids being submitted. I cannot explain this. Obviously, it was really, really difficult as, these 2 years, but despite that, what we've seen is actually an increase in terms of number of outputs. Obviously, can't say whether they were actually better quality or not, the ref will say that, but we haven't had the decrease that other universities have seen, and at least in my department. What I do have as an issue, though, is that the university, because related to that, the university is not considering COVID. So ideas such as research recovery, COVID related, are not discussed here. Or if they are, they're just this lip service being provided, and so it's terrible, and so it's basically business as usual. That's what the university considers us. And for me, it's very difficult to convince the university to invest properly in the research and innovation services, so the professional services which are there to help us with budgets, to help us with know how to hire research assistants, all those kinds of things, who tell us, these are the schemes that are out there, these are really good for you. And so it will be, if you have any tips in terms of how to frame how important these services are, then that for me would be the most important thing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helena. And I'm going to come to Ben next, but I just wanted to pick up a couple of comments in the chat, which I think are quite important. That yes, Goldsmiths have turned off the taps, very much so. And Birmingham, Nikki, you're saying the research budget has been halved, which is shocking. So I think also this sort of reflects on some of the points also that Helena was saying about in this kind of bifurcation of research. So some universities taps on, some are absolutely not, off, halved. And then also some people are submitting bids and journal articles and all sorts, and some people have just ground to a halt. And so there's a definite split that's happening that I think is concerning across the sector. That is something that we could talk about. And too small to have your own tap. Yeah, so I think budgets and finance is just a huge point there. Before I come to Ben, can I just quickly check, Helena, does your funding, does that pay for childcare, or does it just pay for the hotel?
It would also pay for childcare. So if you want to hire a babysitter, for instance, it would actually do that. So it's also applicable for conferences, for instance. If you happen to be able to hire a babysitting service while you're out there doing a conference, well, nowadays, I guess it's possible, you would also pay for babysitting, which I think is really, really important for people with caring responsibilities.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to come to Ben now, but then I'm going to pick up on this issue of resourcing so we can have time for talk about that as well from Catherine's point. Okay, Ben.
Sophie, thank you so much for organising this. I just wasn't sure if Simon had got to say the things he wanted to say as opposed to the things he was responding to. So shall I wait for him to say?
No, you go first, Ben, and I'll go after you. It's on a different point.
This is also lovely and friendly. I love it.
Aren't we wonderful?
I know.
You'll find we're a good. Well, firstly on that, I think this is a brilliant resource, as has been pointed out. First time I've met many of you. I've been a research director for the longest time on and off, since about 2014. So I think what we should do alongside anything else we do is generate an email distribution list out of this, so that these ideas can just be kind of shared on an ongoing basis. Just a few thoughts on what's come up so far. I think my experience is similar in terms of the kind of bifurcation of some people who, God knows how, become incredibly productive in this period, and lots of others who've really not. The other thing I think on kind of research bids and articles and so on is I think there's probably a time lag issue in that some of the work that's gone on to underpin the bids that are still sort of coming to fruition now and so on happened, a lot of it pre-COVID and a lot of the writing pre-COVID. So I think for us as research directors, when we do have to think about ref again, the real concern is that the pinch is really going to come with a time lag mid-cycle when a whole lot of, you know, the pipelines of research bids and articles and books is just not going to be there in the way it was 5 years ago, and ouch, basically. So that's one of the concerns to kind of address or think about. I completely feel your pain in terms of the perhaps relative lack of prioritization of teaching of research relative to teaching in some departmental conversations. We've done quite a good job at work in addressing that, actually, partly through my mantra that I've been shouting to everyone for the last 6 years of research-led teaching, people. It's research-led teaching. So if there's not the research, the teaching will suffer. And if you say that enough to the bean counters, then slowly but surely you get your point across. And you can do other things with your kind of teaching program to underpin research. For example, we've introduced at UG and PG levels, we've introduced a research assistance scheme, so students can apply to participate in research projects of staff members doing whatever needs doing, but so they get a bit of exposure to first-hand research going on at the coalface, as it were, and they get a bit of CV candy and so on. But also it helps people, it creates a bit of kind of capacity and sort of bandwidth to do something on your research project that you just haven't got time and space to think about, even if it's only kind of constructing bibliographies or you know, but there are things that can be done. And it's a good way of kind of underpinning this research-led teaching message. So those were the main things I wanted to bring up. There was probably one or two others, but I've forgotten what they are right now, so I'll stop for now.
Thanks, Ben. And it's good to have a research director who's been research director for so long, from 2014. I don't know how you managed to keep doing that, but you obviously enjoy it. I'm just going to have some positivity there. Okay, so that's some good tips. So absolutely. So research-led teaching. I think the time lag issue is a really big one, and I think one that we all really need to think about. And yes, we also have an RA scheme that we're just trialling for undergraduates and postgraduate taught as well, to try and integrate that within teaching as well. Simon, did you want to raise your point, or do you want me, I've got some hands up with Elizabeth and Margia as well. Just
very quickly, just to put something on the table for if people want to discuss it, is we've talked mostly so far about support for individuals. And one of the things that's been concerning me is about how we restart a research community in a world where lots of us, including me, have got used to working from home much more than we were before. You know, we've restarted our research group seminars this year, those kinds of things, but it's struggling to get traction to be the kind of vibrant community that we were before. So any tips or ideas that people have got on that is also something I'd be interested in.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it's actually really noticeable that the people who attend our research seminar Wednesday, it's dropped off massively. You can tell by the amount of extra lunches there are in the kitchen. So, okay, yeah, let's think that's a good point as well. I just want to make sure I'm keeping an eye on the chat, and also, we've got more hands up. So Elizabeth, would you like to come in?
Hi, yeah, hi, I'm research director at Goldsmiths. I've only just taken over as well. So I was hoping for some advice from more experienced research directors on, I'm just thinking about what you were saying about the kind of divisions within the department, about people who have been super productive and who have managed to carry on through COVID as well, and how to encourage those people who, you know, just prior to the pandemic as well, had sort of ground to a halt in terms of their research, and then were making tentative steps and now have been knocked back again. Like, what kind of emotional support, how do I help encourage them to kind of get back into doing research? Because the college is kind of talking about pushing people onto teaching only contracts, and I just, you know, there's that kind of fear as well. So if anyone has any advice, I'd be really, really grateful.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I mean, I have some ideas, but does anyone else want to come in there?
I can, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm Maria Lisa. I'm the School Research Director for Geography, Politics and Sociology at Newcastle University. Stephen here is for Politics, also on the call. I think on the point of getting people more excited about research, it is something that we're also somewhat struggling, because there's also sometimes this narrative now that after ref, research is, everything related to research is somehow as a burden, right? You know, that you can't burden people with, like, I don't know, getting more funding. You can't burden people with going around research, rather than that the reason why people feel burdened is that they just don't have time, and that time goes somewhere else. And I think what we're trying to do, like what I would like to do, is really remind both the people who are using that narrative and the ones like all of us researchers, is that the reason why we got into these jobs mostly was because of research. That's the thing that used to make our eyes shine, right? And I think there's some of it is just about the reminder. I think there's a big part that what I see is around networking. And I think while with some taps have been mostly turned back on in Newcastle, I think we still need to work for more resources, given that some costs have gone up. When it comes to travel, there's testing costs, there's a cost in terms of what kind of travel we can book and we cannot book. So you have to go with fully refundable flights, etc. All these things are more expensive than they used to be before. So I think that is something really important to keep in mind. Similarly, there are some budgets from the center of university that have changed. For example, what we get from the central IT in terms of software provision and what we don't get. Which is really important, especially for some researchers using more specialist software. So I think there are these kind of hidden costs that are put in without like necessarily realizing that the individual academic is carrying more of the costs now than they did before, even if we are in pre-pandemic levels of research support. I think in terms of where I feel really like also problems is with early career researchers and the staff that have joined in the past couple of years and that kind of network feeling. So we have returned to seminars, etc., but a lot of them are still online. And that would be interesting to actually hear how other departments are doing it, whether you've moved to fully in-person research seminars, what is the kind of uptake of it, whether people are happy to attend, because I think there is like, well, we can do things online. It's never quite this, like I think we've all realized that it's very different from in-person meetings, but especially when it comes to that networking for early career colleagues who basically have missed out. So I really don't know how to make sure that they can have that community and that is necessary for doing research, for getting jobs, etc.
Thanks, Marja. And I'm seeing that there's some other suggestions in the conversation. Oh, I'm sorry, Simon Usherwood. I didn't realize we had two Simons. Sorry about that. So Simon Usherwood saying that one thing that worked well is one-to-ones with him as director of research every 6 months. Yeah, that's really great. I think we do the same. So mentoring has been really big for us. So every professor is expected to mentor, and they have about 4 to 5 mentees, and it's meant to be light touch. So this is why we don't have forms anymore, things like that. But also, yeah, I think my month and a half has just been having a lot of coffees with people, and people saying, well, I'm thinking I'm doing something, and we just saying, just go for it, go for it, go for it. But then also, I think this comes back to Simon Rushton's point about research environment, and then linking that also, I think, to go informal get-togethers. So trying to see if people are comfortable going to the pub, because obviously some people aren't comfortable, getting that going again. And so trying to get people, especially for new colleagues as well. But I completely also understand, Elizabeth, that when we have a morale issue, morale is low. So then this comes back to that kind of like, this is, you know, what Marja was saying, in that this is why you do your job. This is the bit that used to excite you. So find what excites you again. And if that is just taking a sabbatical to read books, that's okay. You know, there doesn't have to be an endpoint. And finally, sorry, because I know lots of people wanted to come in and I'm dominating this too much, is I try and link the money issue around research environment to the ref, to the powers that be. And at one point, you're going to be asked, what did you do post-pandemic, even though we're not even post-pandemic, but post-pandemic to kick things off. And you're going to have to write that in a box in the ref. So start thinking about that. And that sort of actually does translate. Sorry, right, I've got Aidan, Ben, Nikki and Alex. So Aidan, why don't we come to you next?
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm the Associate Dean for Research at Loughborough University in London. And so I'm the head of research across 7 institutes on the campus, but one of those institutes is Diplomacy and International Governance. And we're a postgraduate campus as well, which makes things a little bit different. I wanted to pick up on Simon's point about research environment and community. We decided to protect personal research budgets for individual members of staff so that they could spend on it whatever they want. I mean, the paradox is that usually this would be spent on conferences and people aren't really going for conferences. And so some of us are using it to kind of support PhD students, which that budget has been really slashed, so that it's kind of, yeah, trying to kind of work out what way to spend those personal budgets when the opportunities aren't really there. And one thing that we have got is more of a kind of collective pot of money. And we have tried to focus this on 2 areas. One, we have a thing called joint funds. So a lot of the motivation behind this is to kind of build the kind of community up again. So, you know, to kind of bring colleagues together around a particular project. And usually these are cross-institute as well. So we try and promote more interdisciplinary research. But you can do quite a lot with, you know, like, you know, kind of £4,000 for a kind of a small project that can lead to different kind of outputs. For the joint fund, we focus a lot on impact and the kind of crossover between research and teaching. And then we have another number of bids, or sorry, funds, one which looks at kind of big bids, so trying to build kind of large bids to be submitted to research funders, and another one which is we just created a mid-career research grant, which is to give a kind of basically give the chance of a mid-career scholar, you know, between 5 and 14 years, the chance to be a PI on a project. A lot of these are very instrumental. So the joint funds are leads to impact, potentially impact case studies, and the big bid and the mid-career is to lead to external research grant applications. So nothing is kind of coming for nothing, and there's not as much kind of discovery kind of research as well, which is a pity. But I think that we have to justify every single thing that is being spent, and so this is our way of doing it. Yeah, so that was my point.
Thanks, Aidan. I think they're really helpful. And I really like the idea of the mid-career research grant as well. I think one of the problems we have is actually, so I think there's a problem of some universities just not spending on this, some universities wanting to spend, and then also what people can actually spend the money on, because unless it's buying buyout or they can go somewhere, I feel that's some of the issues that we're having as well. But sorry, Nikki, I was going to come to you next. Hi, Nikki.
Hi there. Hi, thank you so much for organising this. It's absolutely brilliant initiative. So I'm really happy to be here. So is it right for me just to return to the journal submission increasing issue? I don't know if people had spotted, but there'd been some research on this to suggest that journal submissions by men had increased overall, but for women had decreased. Whereas I also saw the other day that apparently reviewing for journals, that work increased for women, but fell for men, if I got that right. So it does suggest there's a gendered nature to this. And another a bit of research I spotted a while ago had found that women with childcaring responsibilities had lost something like 500 research hours or something during the pandemic. So I think it sort of highlights the need to think about this, or to bring in sort of EDI as much as possible. And having chatted with a few colleagues at various institutions, it does seem that some of the gains that had been made in terms of EDI aren't necessarily being kept post-pandemic. So things like there might have been practices where people would have teaching during core hours for people with caring responsibilities, that kind of being whittled away. no admin for women from coming back from maternity leave, that sort of thing. So certainly at Birmingham or in my department, we're trying to really centre EDI issues. Just in terms of supporting people and what can we do? One of the things that we've been doing in a very sort of collaborative bottom-up way is an academic writing group, and this started off once a month before the pandemic, but then when we moved it online it became every week, then every sort of twice a week, and now we do it every single morning. And one of the really nice things is that it just keeps ticking over. People just drop in, and it's kind of got its taken on a life of its own. So that's an absolute lifeline for many of the researchers in our department, and it is something also that, because people can just pop in, you don't have to put a huge amount of time commitment in, but you can catch up with other people and get a little bit of support. So that's the key thing probably that we've been doing that other people haven't mentioned.
Thanks, Nikki. Can I just ask, I'm always intrigued by these academic writing groups. So I always see them on Twitter, all these people sprinting and things, and I'm like, oh, that sounds very energetic. How does it actually work?
So we go on Microsoft Teams. I tend to try and be there as much as I can as research director. At 9 o'clock, we have a little gossip, maybe a little grumble, or talk about somebody's been rejected for from a journal or whatever it would be. We do that for 15 minutes. Then we write for 45 minutes. Then join again at 10, have a little gossip again for 15 minutes. And then we usually run it tends to keep going from 9 until 12:15. But because we've got something like 45 to 50 researchers, it actually means that we've usually got like 4 or 5 or 6 or even more people there. And it's just a really nice way of having a little bit of support from each other, because writing can be horribly miserable, as we all know.
Thanks, Nikki. I've always wondered how that works. So I think that's a really great idea. Everyone loves a little grumble and a gossip as well. So great. Yeah, and I think the EDI issues are so important. I'm really pleased you raised them. And also as research directors, working with our EDI leads as well. Because again, I think especially in those contexts where funding has been cut, it's another claim for actually you need to support this, because there are EDI issues around this. I think it's always, even though these issues should matter in and of themselves, as we all know, as international relations politics people, sometimes you have to construct them to the powers that be. So yeah, okay. Just one sort of looking at the chats, and Lois. Right, okay, yeah, so we can see that these inequalities are coming out. And as Nikki was saying, the pandemic seems like post-pandemic, just forgetting some of the good measures that have been put in place before the pandemic. So even though we know COVID-19 exacerbated these inequalities, seemingly it exacerbated them, but we've gone back 10 years as well in terms of the policies. Okay, Ben, Alex, and then Helena. Ben, back to you.
Yes, so just to reiterate, and Nikki's absolutely right about the EDI points, and Sophie too. So basically nothing in our department that I do, initiatives that I take, gets approved or happens without EDI approval. So we've got 2 deputy heads of department, me and our EDI chair, and we come together and spend a huge amount of time, perhaps too much time, poring over exactly how to make this work from a kind of, but it's so important we do, because there's things that one or other of us doesn't think of, mostly me, that come to light through thinking it through very thoroughly from an EDI perspective. And you can't address everything and you can't resolve everything, but you have to do all in your power to try. On the not just individualized, but kind of community-based sort of approaches to re-energizing research that Simon Rushton was talking about, I think it depends upon how each research infrastructure in a department works. But we have a series of research clusters and a number of research centres, and those are quite useful kind of bodies to act as catalysts, some more than others, but as catalysts to kind of revive research and get people, so you can channel funds to them. And what we've done this year is say, you're going to get a budget, but only if you tell us what you're actually going to do with it. And then the leader has to go and talk to everyone and say, well, what should we do? And there's always an issue from on high saying, you should all do more, I want to help you do more. But there's also an issue of kind of bandwidth. How much can people actually cope with? So if it's a kind of more bottom-up process, well, we would like to put on this and have this research group or this study group, then I think that works better. And the sort of academic writing, I think the best way to do it all is via getting people together to talk about pieces they're working on, sort of work in progress lunches, or we have a kind of a manuscript development service where I will put together a team of kind of proto reviewers for a draft paper, and we'll all come together and talk about it. And that just gets you talking to colleagues about research. And that's kind of that energizing what we all in the business for in the first place point. I think that really helps. And you can do that reasonably effectively online. We haven't yet gone back very face-to-face on anything we do really. So it's more online for now, but in the longer term, it might come back face-to-face. And just the last point to make about buyout, that's so important. We've got all kinds of impediments now, more and more, of getting actually people bought out. And without buyout, you really can't ask for too much. So finding ways, and we're thinking caps are on, finding new ways to kind of mobilize for buyout for teaching, because without that, I think, you know, we can only get so far with the other things we've talked about.
Thanks, Ben. And I think that last point on buyout is really important, and we're getting a lot of pushback. And I think this is going to happen across universities with the hegemony of science now. And we have science teams saying, why do you need buyout? Just get your PhD students to do your research and bung your name on it. And so we hold the line hugely, but maybe hopefully these conversations are going to go on. That's something that we can keep an eye on and then think of what we can do across the discipline, because I think that's a big issue coming up. I was coming to Alex next, I think. Alex, and then Helena, and then Paul. Alex.
I'll be really quick, but I mean, it's just been fantastic hearing people speak about this. And I guess because we're all here, perhaps we're on the same wavelength with this, like, you know, discussions about well-being, how we promote EDI and support after COVID isn't something that we should be competing over for the sake of the ref as institutions, but that we have a duty of care across the discipline to our colleagues. And I wonder, with that in mind, perhaps in terms of taking this forward, maybe we could explore ways of perhaps pooling ideas, maybe have like a shared document where we share best practice with regards to different elements of EDI support, building back from COVID, sabbaticals, or blah, blah, blah. Something where we can use it as a shared resource and kind of learn from one another. So I've already got some brilliant ideas from just listening to you guys. So it'd be really great perhaps to think about that. And I wonder also, you know, that would be a cheap option maybe, but perhaps BISA, to say this, could perhaps invest in maybe someone to do some research around this and to kind of write some sort of report of best practice in the discipline, not necessarily naming particular institutions to make it a competitive thing, but just to kind of talk about best practice and what can be witnessed, just as a suggestion off the top of my head.
Thanks, Alex. I think they are actually really good suggestions and actually just achievable ones. And so perhaps then, once we're just going to take the next two comments in the last 5 minutes, we could actually just think about some things we want to take forward from this conversation, which could be that we don't do anything, we just keep chatting. But I think it definitely, as Ben was saying, have some sort of email list, as you were saying, some sort of best practice, and then go from there, definitely. Helena.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to support what Nikki was saying actually about EDI. No, absolutely correct that actually EDI is so important. If you put it at the heart of what you do, then actually things start to flow much, much better. I think that's, you know, she's also right about the research that's been done on the gender impact of COVID. I think that just to clarify, you know, some of what I mentioned earlier on, one of the reasons why we haven't noticed it here is simply because the large majority of the 80 people here at the department are actually women. So there can't be, you know, there can't be a huge impact on gender if everyone's basically a woman. But I do think that actually I have seen this university put a lot of effort on EDI very recently. You know, suddenly, well, the entire exec is women. The research director, obviously me, I'm a woman. Faculty research director is also a woman. Faculty lead is also a woman. So in a way, and putting a lot of effort into minority representation, etc. So, and I do see there's a real impact coming out of that in terms of research. In terms of the writing group, I think that's a really excellent idea. I think one thing that maybe I could add is that, so obviously, like most universities, we have a mentoring scheme. And sometimes that mentoring scheme, instead of being a one-to-one mentoring scheme, is actually a research mentoring scheme. So basically you create, you know, you have a mentor and you have a group of 3-4 people that meet on a regular basis, and they actually all submit drafts for manuscripts or bids or anything. And so everything is discussed with a lot of people, and that's kind of keeps the motivation going, basically. That's a clear impact isn't on the motivation. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Thanks so much, Helena. Also just want to pick up Graham's point in the chat. They often make the buyout decision locally, working against university guidance. Yes, same here, absolutely. And everyone seems to be very supportive of Alex's ideas as well, so that's great. I just want to come to Paul to give Paul some time to speak. Hi, Paul.
Hey there, I'm Paul Cairney, Stirling. There are two of us from Stirling. I don't know, so we're the best represented here. So Clemens is here too. So I just wanted to tell you about Arias. So we're both ginger as well. I don't know, we're bringing up all kind of quotients here. So the only thing I think that I could say I'm properly proud of in this field is that we came up with 2 equality-driven models for dealing with buyout, against university guidance or working with different parts of university. So essentially, if we're talking about small grants and large grants, if we've got a large grant, then they often come with a small amount of teaching buyout for the person and then research assistance on top. And they're both very poor contracts for 2 different people. So we made this business case that we would pool the money together to produce one good contract for one person. So it was teaching and research over 4.5 years rather than, little kind of small short-term ones for people. And I would say, if anyone wants advice on how to frame it, we've got it written down. In fact, it's in our environment statement as well. But it took a lot of time. It was kind of counterintuitive for a lot of people who are managing these kind of contracts. The second one is a small grant where essentially, in this case, we got that. So there's that problem with buyout below 40%, where you're not going to get a time. And I think what we did was we pulled that money that we would not be able to use with the research assistants and made a 50% into a 1-year full time, just by pulling the money. And in fact, we made the case that the university centre could supplement that money for, professional development to turn it up. So I was quite surprised in both those cases. There are parts of the university that are willing to support that kind of thing, even when other parts of the university will do their best to undermine it.
Well, Paul, it sounds like you're a funding allocation Jedi. I mean, getting a 1-year full-time post, that's incredible. I mean, I would definitely be interested in seeing part of that, of how you sort of, on both of those funding models, how you frame that. I think that would be really useful. Thank you. Okay, unless you have any other comments, maybe I should just wrap this up. Please also continue raising your hands, because I think we can run this till 10, so interrupt me as we go. But I suppose firstly, I think this has been really helpful and it's really beneficial. And I think there's things that we can do going forward. So the first thing is, would everyone like to have another catch up, say in January? I've got some thumbs up. Great. Does Wednesday at 9 o'clock work for everyone, or is it absolutely horrendous? I just picked a time so that Sarah could join us at 9. Great. Okay, let's stick with that. We'll do it towards the end of January so everyone can have their little research period or holiday. Hopefully everyone's got some holiday. Remember them? So yeah, we'll do another one in January. In the interim as well, what I could do is I could write up some of the notes in the next couple of weeks from this meeting, and I'll circulate it to the group and perhaps put it on a blog post for BISA so it's everyone, other research directors can do it. I'm just writing up all this stuff I said I'm going to do. And I think going forward, there's a couple of things that we should definitely, I think, continue to talk about. I think this separation of those that have money and those that don't have money, ways in which we can be creative with drawing on resources, ways we can be creative in building research community, because environment is the ref term, isn't it? But we know what we're talking about, the good stuff, the research community. And then also I was thinking, when we were talking about these kind of impediments to buyout, the EDI issues, if as a group, depending how the conversations go, this could be 9 months from now, how we might feed that into research funders as well. So how we might want to feed that into the ESRC. This is a long term. We don't have to do this. We can just have a nice coffee. I'm not saying this has to be a project. We're all so busy, but let's keep an eye on things, because if things continue to kind of split like this, then I think there is something that we could perhaps say. But I'm not going to sign anyone up to doing anything big. Don't worry. Just turn up, have a chat, do whatever you need to do. Yeah. So did anyone else have any comments? Nice. You're not an imposter. No one's an imposter. Everyone's great. Yes. What about meeting as a group in the next BISA conference? I think absolutely. I think we can just keep this going. Great, everyone's so nice. Look, I should get you all up at 9 o'clock meetings in the future. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. If you have any ideas, I'm going to talk to BISA about how we kind of like set up some sort of email list serve. Look at me sounding very early 2000s. And then maybe a sharing platform as well, so we can share resources. I think that would be really helpful. Because just to kind of link with what everyone said, I think we are coming at this as a kind of mutual support and well-being, rather than thinking, yay, we're just going to like boost our own universities and institutions. We want to support each other in the discipline, and I think we do have a duty of care to the discipline. I think Alex said that, and I think that's definitely where I'm going with it. And also it's just nice to see other research directors, isn't it lovely? We all do the same thing in different ways. PSA rather than BISA. Sorry, Graham. Yeah, absolutely. Big love to the Political Studies Association. Never want to discriminate. All are welcome. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.